Discover the incredible transformative journey through the underworld. 7 touching myths revealed. Maya stood at the front of her classroom, the clamor of her students a distant echo against the drab gray walls. She faced their youthful energy, a sharp contrast to the consuming routine that enveloped her life like a heavy cloak. Their laughter seemed to mock the weariness etched into her features. Every day felt like a Sisyphean struggle against the crushing weight of an underfunded school and the relentless ambitions of her younger colleagues, who seemed to glide effortlessly into media trends, leaving her behind. Each morning, her resolve waned as she battled the creeping shadows of doubt that draped themselves over her like a shroud. Her dedication to literature had always been her saving grace. Yet lately, it frayed under the relentless grind. The murmurs of the school's budget cuts echoed ominously through her mind, and the anticipation of the school board meeting loomed like a storm cloud over her spirit. What did it mean to inspire others when she felt so uninspired? The very essence of her teaching felt at odds with her present and distant from her immigrant past, a past she felt too disconnected from to draw strength. As the school year trudged on, Maya stumbled onto a worn anthology of ancient myths during one of her nightly grading sessions. The tales of transformative journeys resonated deep within her, igniting a flicker of hope amidst the grayness. What if these stories could set the stage for change? She wondered, her heart racing at the thought. She introduced these narratives to her students, urging them to see their own lives reflected in the epic journeys of heroes and heroines. The classroom became electric with enthusiasm as students shared their thoughts, their voices merging into a choir of dreams and aspirations. She felt alive again, a pulse of excitement reviving under her skin. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the flicker dimmed as whispers of cuts to the literacy program reached her ears. The walls she had once found inspiring felt like a prison now, suffocating her spirit with the threat of losing what she fought so hard to ignite within her students. Desperation clawed at her insides as she contemplated telling her class of the impending cuts. How could she explain to them that their dreams, their newfound connection to literature, were in jeopardy? Would they understand how profoundly she felt their struggles mirrored those of the heroes from the myths they explored together? A suffocating dread tightened around her heart. The school principal, her former mentor, had dismissed her dreams for years, reducing her aspirations to mere footnotes in his own narrative of success. The thought of going head-to-head with him sent panic racing through her veins. What if her fragile resolve crumbled under the weight of his condescension? Maya unearthed a family diary hiding in her childhood home, revealing the struggles her ancestors endured for education, their sacrifices spilling into her consciousness like ink on a page. Memories of long-forgotten traditions tugged at her, igniting a fierce urge to reclaim her heritage. Yet, amidst the echoes of determination lay the heartbreaking truth of her current stagnation. The stakes rose as she prepared for the school board meeting, questioning whether she had the strength to confront her past and the demons of her present. Would she dare to stand on this precipice of change, even as uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud? Maya awoke that morning with a weight on her chest, the echoes of her thoughts swirling like restless winds in the corners of her mind. She had often romanticized the idea of transformation, believing change to be a glorious journey akin to the epics she taught. Yet, standing on the brink of her school board presentation, she felt more like a reluctant hero, unarmed and unsure. As she prepared her lesson, Maya practiced her delivery for the board meeting in front of the cracked mirror in her small apartment. The reflection stared back with a blend of fear and determination. She doubted whether they would listen. The weight of apathy she had encountered was disheartening. The journal lay open beside her, filled with the anecdotes of her ancestors, each word a testament to the power of education and the battles fought to achieve it. They had faced their own darkness, and now their struggles flickered in her mind, igniting the ember of resolve she thought she had lost. Arriving at school, She took a deep breath, her heart steadying as she approached her classroom. The chatter of her students usually filled her with joy, but today it merely underscored the chaos of her thoughts. They busied themselves preparing a project based on the myths she had introduced. Their excitement was palpable, a stark contrast to her eroding confidence. It was a reminder that every story had its trials, and her students were ready to rise to their own challenges. How could she let them down? She gathered her courage and leaned into her role. "Class, can we talk?" she began, her voice steadier than she felt. The room quieted as she presented the looming threat of funding cuts. She expected despair, even anger. Instead, the classroom transformed into a whirlwind of ideas. Her students rallied, brainstorming ways to advocate for their program, highlighting the importance of storytelling and literature in their lives. Maya watched in awe as their youthful passion ignited a fire within her, meeting her fears with their own fervent energy. With their support, she found the strength to craft a powerful narrative for the board meeting. She wove in stories from her family, echoing the struggles they had overcome, connecting her past to their present. Each word felt like a lifeline, restoring her identity beyond the confines of her role. They were not just fighting for literature. They were empowering a generation. The day of the meeting arrived with an air of finality. Maya stood at the front of the room, the board members in different expressions sharply contrasting with the hopeful faces of her students who had chosen to attend. She started her presentation, the myths that inspired her flowing through her words like an incantation. Each tale of transformation entwined with her own, creating a tapestry of purpose. Her voice, once trembling, grew bolder. She could feel the power of the stories reverberating in the room, the thread of human experience stitching them together. Just as Odysseus had faced his trials, she too faced her demons in this confrontation, a battle for the future of her students' dreams resting in her hands. But as she reached the crux of her presentation, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Would they appreciate the value of her narrative, or would her vulnerability be met with scorn? The uneasy silence that followed her final words was deafening, stirring an undercurrent of anxiety. Finally, the principal's voice echoed in the hollow room. "We'll discuss this," he began, an eyebrow raised, his skepticism barely hidden. The tension was sharp enough to cut through steel. Maya swallowed, bracing herself for his response. In that moment, she realized that she had stepped off the precipice into the unknown. The meeting would determine not just the fate of the literacy program but also her fate as an educator, as a woman who refused to be silenced. Unresolved questions hung in the air. Could she muster the courage to challenge the established narrative of her life, or had she finally found her voice? With the board's decision looming just beyond the threshold, she felt the destiny of both herself and her students teetering on the edge. Would this audacious stand yield the change she sought, or would it echo back her fears? Maya left the meeting with a hollow feeling in her stomach, the uncertainty of the board's response weighing her down like winter snow. Each step through the quiet halls felt heavy, her heart beating in sync with her worries about what their decision would entitle. As she passed her classroom, she glanced inside at her students, who had transformed the tables into makeshift presentations. Their excitement pierced through her cloud of doubt like bright sunlight breaking through the fog. They were the embodiment of hope, a stark contrast to her internal turmoil. With her walls closing in, Maya sought refuge in the library after school, a space filled with the knowledge and stories that had always drawn her in. The scent of paper and ink wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She found a secluded corner and sank into a worn armchair, leafing through stories of resilience and courage. Seeing characters who faced overwhelming odds reignited a glimmer of determination within her. But her mind refused to be quiet, echoing the principal's skeptical brow raised during her presentation. What if her students' faith in her was mislaid? The thought spiraled into a deeper fear that she was not equipped to lead them. She had spent years shaping their minds, but what if she was unable to shape her own fate? Each page turned seemed to whisper her doubts back at her, clashing against the unyielding desire to prove herself. After a restless hour, Maya closed the book, suddenly resolute. This fear was not her destiny. It was merely another challenge to confront. She didn't just owe it to herself but to the young minds waiting for her guidance and support. They had inspired her, igniting a fire of ambition that eclipsed her previous doubts. It was time to confront the board again, and this time she would be armed with more than just words. She would harness the collective aspirations of her students. With newfound determination, Maya returned to the school the next day prepared to gather her students. They would brainstorm about how to present their case effectively, and she would encourage them to share their own stories, personal reflections that could resonate deeply with the board members. The very vision of the educational experience they would continue to shape hung in the balance, and she wouldn't allow their voices to fade into obscurity. "I know you all have your own stories," she began, her voice steady as she faced her class. "Stories of what literature means to you. Moments when a book opened a door you didn't know existed. Let us turn those personal anecdotes into our weapons." The students lit up, their thoughts bubbling over like a pot about to boil. They began to share moments when narratives and books mirrored their own lives, enlightening discussions blooming into a vibrant exchange of ideas. Maya took notes furiously, harnessing the power of their narratives, weaving these insights into a cohesive plan. Days turned into a flurry of creativity. The classroom became a sanctuary for discovering their voice. They crafted speeches and visual aids filled with every ounce of passion they held. Yet, doubts loomed as the chaos persisted. Would these testimonies truly bring about the change they so desperately sought? The evening of the follow-up meeting arrived, anticipation crackling through the air like charged electricity. With each student beside her, Maya approached the boardroom, acutely aware of the weight her students' hopes had placed on her shoulders. The decision made behind closed doors fell in line with her courage, a path carved not just for herself but for those emerging storytellers before her as they entered. Maya's heart raced, the tension palpable, igniting a sense of shared purpose. She sensed the collective fear and courage rippling through her students. This time, with their voices united in testament, they were ready to push through the noise of skepticism. The moment felt pivotal. Their fate awaited within those cold, unyielding walls. At that moment, she couldn't help but wonder, could the power of their stories shatter the apathy that had long governed the board's decisions? Maya stood at the threshold of the boardroom, her students flanking her like a protective barrier against the encroaching shadows of doubt. The polished surface of the conference table loomed ahead, a formidable reminder of the power dynamics at play. She had never disliked those meetings before. However, this time, they felt charged with a purpose that was painfully personal. Each child behind her represented a narrative waiting to be unveiled, a story that could reshape their educational destiny as they settled in. She could feel the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface, an energy she both understood and yearned to transform into something powerful. Staring at the board members seated in their austere chairs, Maya inhaled deeply, reminding herself to see beyond their stern expressions. Wasn't that what she was teaching her students? To dig deeper, to challenge perceptions, and to embrace vulnerability as strength. She initiated the meeting with a calm, steady voice. "Thank you for meeting with us again. We've come today not just with a proposal, but with real voices, stories that bring our mission to life." The words flowed from her like a mantra, and she could feel the unwavering support of her students radiating through the room as her students began to speak. Their timid voices gradually transformed into courageous proclamations. They recounted tales of personal resonance with literature, of how characters had mirrored their struggles and aspirations, serving as mirrors and mentors through the written word. Maya observed their faces closely, noting the raw emotion seeping into the cracks of their narratives. It was more than just an exercise in public speaking. It was a powerful display of their resilience. Each story recounted felt like a small victory, yet the board remained unmoved, their expressions impenetrable. Maya's heart raced with the weight of their expectations, each unyielding gaze a reminder of the stakes. Would their vulnerability be dismissed? She could see the students glancing at her, seeking reassurance as they bared their souls. It was a moment that demanded a response not just from them, but from her. Deciding to step in, she took a calculated risk. "What we are asking for is not only resources but acknowledgement of our potential. These students have illustrated how literature can transform lives. What we need is your commitment to their journeys. The words felt like a call to arms, and in that moment, she felt a surge of clarity. Failure to act on their behalf would be a betrayal of their shared journey. Suddenly, the principal, known for his stoicism, leaned forward. "Maya," he began, a hint of curiosity softening his voice. "Can you provide specific examples of these transformations? We need tangible evidence of the impact." Maya's mind raced, recalling the student who had once hidden behind a wall of silence, now animatedly describing how a book about friendship had inspired her to reach out and make genuine connections. She felt the fury of adrenaline pump through her veins, seizing the moment. "Absolutely," she said, turning to her students, urging them with a nod to delve deeper. They shared stories of newfound confidence, passion igniting in their eyes, and resilience woven into their every word. The atmosphere shifted slightly. Maya sensed the board's defenses beginning to crack. Their attention was piqued, engaged by the authenticity radiating from the students. But as she spoke, doubt crept back in. Would it be enough? Were these brave testimonials sufficient to sway the board? What if they remained indifferent, choosing to ignore the mighty force of youthful potential? As the meeting drew closer to a close, Maya felt a trembling resolve strengthen within her. This was not merely her fight. It was shared by everyone in the room. She had helped them find their voices, but could she harness her own overwhelming doubt? The board members exchanged glances, moments that felt like an eternity in which the path ahead remained uncertain. Could they galvanize the decision that would breathe life into their shared vision? Maya had to confront her own fears and take this leap with the knowledge that she had done everything she could to inspire her students. The moment had come. The decision loomed ahead, and she braced herself for whatever came next. In that charged silence, Maya wondered if she could transform this pivotal opportunity into a catalyst for change. With hope clinging to the corners of her heart, she stood ready to face the unknown. Would courage be enough to break through the fortress of indifference? The moment of silence stretched, drawing the air thick with anticipation. Maya's heartbeat echoed in her ears, punctuated by the shifting papers and quiet murmurs from the board members. She had presented the essence of her students' experiences, woven together with threads of determination and growth. But now the question remained, was that enough to tip the scales? As the head of the board finally spoke, his voice resonated through the room, pulling her from the depths of her thoughts. "Maya, your students' passion is clearly evident. However, we need more than passion, we need measurable outcomes. If we are to invest in this program, we need to see how it will address academic results. How will this translate into improved scores, better attendance, or higher graduation rates?" His challenge wasn't unexpected, yet it struck deeply. It was a demand for numbers and performance, a stark contrast to the emotional stories that had filled the air moments before. Maya's mind raced. She had devoted herself to nurturing creativity and expression among her students, but now she felt the weight of her role as an educator shift to one of accountability. Her instinct was to recoil, to shelter herself and her students behind the shield of art and literature. But as she looked around at the eager faces of her students, every pair of eyes pleading for validation, she knew retreating wasn't an option. Their struggle had merit, and she had to find a way to articulate that merit in terms the board could understand. Taking a breath, mapping a strategy in real time, Maya replied, "I understand that data is crucial, but education is not solely defined by test scores. It's about personal growth and the transformation of individual lives. I can gather testimonials, initiate surveys, and follow up with assessments that illustrate student progress holistically. We can track their engagement, attendance rates, and ultimately their willingness to share their narratives." For a brief moment, she could see small flickers of interest in the eyes of the board. It was a breakthrough, yet she felt the urgency to delve deeper. Imagine a platform where students not only learn to interpret literature, but also cultivate a love for it, one that inspires them to become active contributors, both academically and socially. If we can harness their engagement and fuel it toward measurable goals, we could witness extraordinary results. The room crackled with new energy. Maya was finally gaining momentum. She could feel her pulse steadying as she seamlessly transitioned from addressing their demands to laying down her vision. Yet, in the back of her mind, a nagging doubt lingered: would these ideas translate into results? After disposing of a wave of self-doubt, she focused on her students, drawing strength from their unwavering belief. Their stories were a testament to the power of narrative, and it was time to make that power undeniable. With newfound determination, Maya forged ahead, igniting ideas of community outreach programs, incorporating local authors into their curriculum, and creating showcases for students to present their creative projects. Each initiative crafted an image of success, a dynamic program capable of enhancing student engagement and achievement. In that moment, she understood that her role transcended just being an instructor. She was an advocate, a storyteller for those who had felt overlooked. The challenge of merging artistry with accountability was her crucible, one where her professional identity would be forged anew as she wrapped up her proposal. The fatigue of her earlier hesitation had morphed into a resolution that filled her with fierce hope. She took one last look at the board, each member now leaning forward, intrigued by the possibilities she was presenting. But just as she was about to conclude, the principal interjected, "All of these strategies sound promising, but there is still one major point we haven't addressed: funding. Can you guarantee us the necessary financial backing for all of this?" His gaze was steady, and with it came the weight of reality crashing back. Maya's heart sank. It was the final piece of the puzzle that could make or break her vision. The challenge now was not only to convince them of the program's worth, but also to navigate the labyrinth of finances. As she contemplated her next move, she realized that this was perhaps the most pivotal moment yet in her journey. Could she take the painful uncertainty of funding and transform it into an opportunity for creative solutions? Would this lead her to face the very real possibility of failure, or could it be a launchpad for a narrative of innovation? Maya squared her shoulders, ready to tackle the next phase of this formidable challenge. The coming days and decisions loomed ahead. Answering the call would demand everything from her. The time had come to confront the financial complexities and secure the future of her students. Would she rise to meet this challenge, or would the vision crumble under the weight of practicality? Maya returned home, her mind swirling with a mix of determination and anxiety. The board's expectations gnawed at her, the request for funding becoming her new Everest. Each way she turned, she encountered walls. The numbers, the statistics, the projections, they weighed heavy on her spirit, transforming her vision into a cacophony of unresolved questions. But deep down, she understood this was more than just about securing financial backing. It was about the very ethos of her teaching philosophy. That night, unable to sleep, she rifled through her notes. Every anecdote from her students felt like a lifeline. She began to rewrite her proposals, not just as a means to appease the board, but as a narrative that showcased her students' potential. She realized she needed to give life to those numbers, transforming abstract values into concrete stories of success. Metrics alone wouldn't suffice. They required context. She jotted down how she could illustrate growth through emotional engagement, artistic expression, and community impact. As the days passed, she doubled down on her efforts. Early mornings turned into late nights as she pored over educational grants, attended webinars on funding resources, and sought out local business partnerships. The more she learned about financial pathways, the more empowered she felt. Each email she sent to potential sponsors stoked the flames of hope, igniting a new sense of purpose within her. But with growth came fear. What if her proposals fell flat? What if her outreach efforts yielded no results? These doubts lingered, but they propelled her to work with renewed vigor. She saw flashes of her students' faces, each one reminding her why she was fighting so hard. They had come to trust her, to lean on her expertise, and now it was up to her to deliver. Maya began utilizing her skills as a communicator. She organized a gathering with her students, encouraging them to share their artistic works. The idea was to collect voices not only for testimonials but also to develop a compelling narrative highlighting the necessity of financial support. She knew that highlighting her students' achievements would not just attract funding. It would also create a palpable enthusiasm around the program itself. Standing before her class, she felt a surge of inspiration. "We need to show the board what our work means," she said, her voice steady. "Let us make a presentation that illustrates not just our dreams but also our tangible progress." The room buzzed with excitement, and she could see that her enthusiasm was infectious. They began brainstorming creative ways to present their work to the board: video testimonies, art displays, even performing pieces of literature they had created. The bright energy filled her spirit, but a darker thought loomed. What if this wasn't enough? She wrestled with the internal dichotomy between confidence and doubt, but the moment she watched her students collaborate and thrive, she realized this was her true currency. Their resilience and passion were qualities that could not be quantified. Yet they were profoundly transformative as the date of the presentation approached. Every practice session reinforced her commitment. Maya was no longer merely a facilitator. She was a catalyst for change in her students' lives. She had found in them a reservoir of creativity waiting to be unleashed. Just as she was starting to feel settled, a knock on her door startled her. It was the principal, his expression serious. "Maya, I just learned that the board has decided to cut funding for programs like ours. We need to act quickly," he said, each word sending tremors through her resolve. Her heart raced. This might be the final hurdle. Could she pivot this in an entirely new direction, or would this be the end of her vision? The stakes had never been higher, and the clock was ticking. Would the culmination of her hard work be enough, or would it all unravel in the face of the unexpected? Maya clenched her fists, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The battle was far from over, and she intended to fight with everything she had. Maya swallowed hard, pushing the principal's words deeper into her mind as she tried to grasp the enormity of the situation. The stark reality of lost funding loomed overhead like a storm cloud, but instead of retreating into despair, it ignited a fire within her. How could everything she'd painstakingly built evaporate in an instant? Determined to fight back, she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and plunged into action. She began by reassessing her strategy. What if she framed the funding issue as an opportunity rather than a setback? Thoughts raced through her mind as she sketched out a new narrative, a story of resilience not just for her program, but for every student whose journey would be curtailed without the resources to continue their development. The board's decision might have been made from a distance, but Maya knew the real impact lay in the hearts of her students. That perspective would become her battle cry. Dividing her time between the chaotic afternoon of classes and the intense nights of planning, she made a list of every potential ally she could approach. Local businesses, parent-teacher associations, and education activists. Each potential contact felt like a lifeline. Even if the risks were high, she had to try. In quiet moments late at night, she honed her messages, intertwining stories of her students' remarkable achievements with practical reasons why funding her program was a worthwhile investment. Weeks turned into a blur of preparation. Maya conducted small focus groups with her students, asking them to articulate what the program meant to them. Their heartfelt testimonials not only fueled her spirit, but also shaped her presentations. The raw emotion in their voices reshaped her strategy. Suddenly, her mission became not only about funding, but about educating and empowering others to see the profound impact her program had on individual lives. With newfound determination, she scheduled meetings with key stakeholders, ensuring to bring students along to share their stories. Each encounter solidified her belief that the collective passion of voices could not be ignored. But deep inside, doubt still threatened to creep into her mind as she prepared for each meeting. What if her numbers weren't compelling enough? What if the board's decision was final? Each thought raced through her like a shadow lurking in the corners of her ambition, but she fought to drown them out with action. The day of the first presentation arrived. Maya stood outside the board's conference room, the cool air biting against her skin. The knot in her stomach felt heavy, but she straightened her back and reminded herself that they were more than just statistics. They were stories waiting to be told. As she stepped inside, her gaze landed on the board members, whose expressions were stern but curious. With a steady voice, she introduced her students. As they shared their experiences, reinforcing the value of her program through their art and spoken word, Maya's heart swelled with pride. She could feel the energy shift in the room as emotions spilled forth. Yet, even amidst the hopeful momentum, A ticking urgency echoed in her mind. The principal's warning loomed like a clock counting down to silence. Would all this be sufficient to sway their decision? Could she truly ignite a flame of change in a bureaucracy often shrouded in indifference? The final minutes of her presentation approached, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility hit her square in the chest. This was more than just a fight for funding. It was a moment to illustrate the profound effect education could have on these students' destinies. As she concluded with a call to action, Maya locked eyes with the board members, each stare compelling her to stand firm and unwavering. The moment hung in the air, charged with anticipation. Just as she prepared to leave, one board member raised a hand, cutting through the silence. "We have some questions for you, Maya," he began, and her heart sank slightly. This was the moment that could either make or break everything she had worked for. Was she ready to face the scrutiny ahead? Would her carefully crafted narrative hold strong under pressure? The answers awaited like a tightly sealed door, one that she was about to pry open. Maya's heart raced as she steadied herself. The board member's hand raised like an unwelcome signal, a semblance of authority weighing heavily in the air. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had come prepared. Time to engage in a verbal dance. Each question a potential leap toward clarity or a stumble into chaos. "Ms. Thompson," the board member began, his tone clinical, "can you quantify how your program impacts academic performance? Do you have any statistics or measurable outcomes to present?" The question sliced through her confidence like a knife cutting through fog. She had anticipated this moment, questions rooted in the need for cold, hard data, but the pressure behind it loomed larger than she had imagined. Equal parts nervousness and determination surged through her. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steadying as she tapped into the stories she had gathered. "We've seen improved literacy rates among participating students. Last semester, 75% of my students who engaged in the program showed increased scores in their reading assessments." A flicker of doubt in the board member's eyes caught her off guard. Was that enough? "Impressive," he acknowledged, scribbling notes. Yet his skepticism lingered like a shadow. Steeling herself for the next query, Maya pushed forward, reminding herself that behind each statistic lay a unique story of growth and grit as passionate testimonies of her students echoed in her ears. Another board member, a woman with sharply raised eyebrows, interjected. "What about funding alternatives? If we don't approve additional resources, do you have a backup plan?" The question sent pangs of anxiety through Maya. The safety net of a backup plan felt flimsy at best. "While I'm exploring grants and community support, the truth is," she paused, weighing her words, "the future of our program heavily depends on this funding. Without it, I'm afraid we can't sustain the growth we've achieved or reach more students." What did it say about her leadership that she didn't have a concrete answer? Would they see that as a weakness? As she fought internally, Maya felt an unusual strength emerge. A realization struck her. She was not merely fighting for the program but becoming an advocate for the truth, revealing the stark and often uncomfortable realities of dependency on institutional support. The dialogue continued, each question pushing Maya to reevaluate not just her professional strategy but also her resilience. She felt alive with a sense of purpose. No longer simply a presenter, she was becoming a vessel for the voices of her students. Yet the doubts gnawed at her. Could she rally them fully behind her vision? How much more could she give? "Do you believe your program can survive without our funding long-term?" Another board member pressed. The challenge felt like a punch. "It will survive." Her resolve surged like a wave. "But not without significant sacrifices that may limit our students' access to quality education and personal growth opportunities." The truth of her words resonated with all present as a moment of raw vulnerability thrummed through the room. The response was visceral, something she could feel soak into the atmosphere. With each exchange, Maya discovered fragments of hidden strength bubbling within her. Passion migrated from mere hope into a fierce determination to evoke change. Those archives of trauma and triumph were no longer just her students' stories. They had become part of her narrative too. As the questioning moved into deeper territory, she sensed that she was on the verge of a breakthrough. Yet with this surge of clarity came the weighty burden of impending finality. Would the truth of her passion, Her undeniable connection to her students proved compelling enough. The moment the discussion shifted to logistics, cash flow, specific donor details, metrics and ambivalence crept back into Maya's spirit. Would the analytical minds of the board let compassion prevail over numbers? The conversation wound down, laden with tension. While motion to vote loomed imminent, Maya felt a fragment of fear about the outcome. Her instinct whispered to seize the opportunity to share one last impactful story, a young student whose life had transformed through her program. As she prepared to speak again, a bold idea ignited. What if she opened up about her own journey? A narrative of her own struggles in the pursuit of education, mirroring that of her students. By exposing her vulnerability, would she strengthen her position or risk losing control? Caught between fear and the urge to bare her soul, Maya stood at a crossroad, one that could change her destiny and, potentially, the futures of every student she fought for. Would she dare to embrace this moment of personal revelation? And so, as the board members exchanged glances, waiting for her next words, Maya felt the walls of her reality shift as her fate, the very heart of her mission, hung in a fragile balance. Would this be a turning point or the beginning of the end? Maya inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the room pressing against her as the board members fidgeted in silence, their eyes trained expectantly on her. With every breath, her mind flickered through memories, shades of past failures and triumphs, moments that felt like they had shaped the woman she was today. Could she really weave these threads into something powerful enough to sway the decision before her? How often do we talk about the paths we choose? She began, her voice firm yet undeniably vulnerable. I grew up in a place where education felt like a privilege. My parents sacrificed everything so I could attend school, but I often found myself lost in the crowd. A small spark ignited within her. She shifted her weight onto the balls of her feet, casting her gaze over the board. I was just one of many, unseen and unheard. It took time for me to understand that my voice mattered just as much as my peers. She could see the flicker of interest in some faces, the traces of empathy beginning to replace skepticism. Harnessing that subtle shift, she pressed on, sharing a poignant moment from her past, a time when a teacher had taken an interest in her struggle, helping her realize the significance of her story and the value she could bring to others. That teacher's belief opened a door I didn't even know existed. It saved me, she emphasized, her heart racing as she revealed, and I want to be that door for my students. Every word felt like a stroke on a canvas, painting the dire need for her program as a reflection of her own journey. As she began detailing the stories of the students whose lives had changed through her efforts, from the girl who learned to read after years of being told she wouldn't succeed, to the boy who developed a passion for writing that once felt unattainable, Maya felt the layers of her previous hesitance wash away. The words poured out like rain nourishing parched soil, building upon her sense of identity as an educator and advocate. With each narrative, she increasingly saw the importance of connection, not just between students and their education, but between her own experiences and those of the board members. But then, doubt rippled through her. Would they still perceive her as merely a passionate employee fighting for funding? Or would they see beyond the numbers to the childlike wonder that education fostered? She could sense the board members isolating themselves again, their expressions flickering back to a mix of analysis and contemplation. Miss Thompson, one of them interrupted, a glint of thoughtfulness in her eyes. Can you articulate how your past informs your approach to running this program, particularly in terms of sustainability? That question unfurled anew for Maya. It was an invitation to explore her professional evolution, a chance to align her narrative with a core part of her leadership. A sense of urgency seized her, pushing her forward. I've learned that sustainability comes from genuine relationships. I've begun reaching out to local businesses inspired by my own journey. Those connections not only help alleviate financial pressures, but also foster community ownership of our mission. My commitment isn't just to the program. It's to the education ecosystem, a network built on shared values and aspirations. Maya's heart raced with both fear and clarity. She understood now that sustainability didn't just require funds, but a framework built on engagement, collaboration, and trust. The words rolled off her tongue, each sentence forging a more profound bond between her and those present. Just as she felt the tide turning in her favor, another board member spoke up. All this is undeniably heartfelt, but we still revert to the question of logistics. What does your program look like without financial backing? The weight of his words hung in the air like an anchor, drawing her back to that uncertainty. She had laid her soul bare, yet the reality of funding loomed like a dark cloud. Would they really see the necessity for compassion in the analytical world of numbers? Maya felt the moment. Stretch, a fork the road loomed large before her. Would she go back to the practicality of metrics, or would she take another leap into vulnerability? Her heart thudded in her chest, perhaps revealing that final thread of her journey could forge a connection strong enough to overcome their reluctance. With that flicker of courage igniting once more, Maya prepared to reveal how the doubts she faced every day became the very drivers behind her relentless pursuit of accessibility and opportunity. But she also sensed the ends of her story were fast approaching. Could she pivot this final note into a decisive moment, a culmination of everything she had fought for? And in that breath-holding silence, did she dare to confront the fears that shrouded her commitment as it now clashed with her foundational belief in the power of education? Maya stood resolutely before the board, the pulse of anticipation reverberating in the air. No longer merely an educator, she had become a champion for change, her journey morphing into a kaleidoscope of shared stories. As she felt the weight of every gaze upon her, she made the conscious choice to intertwine her vulnerabilities with her goals. Without funding, she began, her heart hammering against her ribcage. The dream for these students becomes perilous. My own experience taught me that a lack of resources can stifle potential. These students deserve a foundation from which they can leap, not an abyss that swallows their aspirations. The words, ignited by her connection to their struggles, resonated powerfully. In that moment, she summarized their journey together, their resilience, creativity, and the tremendous transformations sparked by their shared passion for literature. When I stood where they now stand, I had someone believe in me. Today, I stand for them, proving that belief must be more than a silent wish. It must convert into actionable support. The board members exchanged glances, scanning her earnest expression for something deeper, some truth revealed beyond charts and metrics. Maya felt a shift. Perhaps it was the authenticity of her narrative, or the power of her students' stories that pierced the veneer of bureaucratic indifference. Then, almost instinctively, she transitioned to a practicality that resonated. The sustainability of this program doesn't hinge solely on numbers. It's built on partnerships and community engagement. I envision outreach programs, workshops that invite local authors and businesses to collaborate with us, fostering a support network that promotes not just the arts but literacy enhancement as a community value. Maya's words hung in the air, laden with both hope and urgency. The vision was clear. Sustainability grounded in community ownership, where businesses could foster relationships with the budding authors in her classroom, investing in their futures as a reflection of their own legacy. As she concluded, Maya could feel the air of the room shift, the board members leaning closer, engaged. Each moment magnified the significance of her journey, not just for her students, but for herself. She had evolved from a timid instructor into a dynamic advocate prepared to confront and reshape the educational narrative. Scenarios replayed in her mind thoughts of her ancestors, of struggles that had laid the groundwork for her opportunities. She had crossed a threshold where her past and future converged. She no longer battled shadows but stood firmly in the light of her purpose. The head of the board finally spoke, his tone one of contemplation. Maya, your passion is palpable, and the potential for your program is apparent. However, before we can make a decision, we need concrete planned strategies for how your vision can manifest through data and community collaboration. Maya nodded, relieved that her clarity was noted. Absolutely, and I would love to collaborate with stakeholders on a measurable plan to track student progress. With clear metrics, we can transform this initiative into something sustainable, proving its worth not just through funding, but through growth, empowerment, and success. The board members were silent for a moment, mulling over her last statement. Finally, the principal spoke, his voice more conciliatory. Let us deliberate on this proposal and the documents you will provide. Your compelling narrative and the students' tales deserve our utmost consideration. As she stepped out of that room, Maya felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction flooding through her. She had transformed from an uncertain teacher into a recognized advocate. Her confidence solidified, her connection to her roots a wellspring of strength. She had articulated not only a compelling vision but a sustainable plan to safeguard the future of not just her program, but the dreams of those she taught. In the hallways, students awaited her return. Their eager eyes and hopeful expressions welcomed her like the dawn after a long night. "Did you do it?" they asked, filled with anticipation. With a broad smile, Maya replied, "We're one step closer. We fought hard, and your stories will resonate far beyond these walls." In that instant, she felt a profound pride not just as an educator, but as a bearer of legacies. She had faced her fears, confronted bureaucracy with passion, and had taken the leap into vulnerability that had ultimately affirmed her purpose. This was her true achievement: a solidified confidence, an established position as an advocate, and a lasting legacy that would empower generations. Maya understood this was just the beginning. Her students would continue to thrive, and so would she. The journey ahead would require resilience, but she was ready, grounded in strength and community. Today, she had conquered both the uncertainty of her path and the limitations imposed by others. This moment was hers, and she would not lose sight of the transformation ignited within her. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.